right, welcome out. Here we are. Another list in our continuing list of lists. This one is how to email your professor properly. I had one student, believe it or not, one time, you might think this is a relatively straightforward thing. Just send an email, do this and that and whatnot. It's very simple and straightforward. However, there's a lot of things you can mess up. So again, it's about paying attention to detail. Guess what most employers want? They want you to pay attention to detail. Believe it or not, a lot of the things that your professors ask you to do, that you're required to do in your classes, for your coursework, for your homework, for your assignments, is oftentimes translated to skills, knowledge, and attitudes that most employers are looking for. All right, so it all works together. It's not just, pet peeves that professors or administrators have or whomever. It's about getting you, the student, up to snuff to be able to work in the workplace and to function at a minimal capacity. Hopefully, we're looking for mid to higher range capacity, not just standard, just getting by capacity. But we want you to function at a high level. Okay. So anyways, I had a student, as it says here, email me saying, I got a B, I don't understand. I think they may have even said, I'm an A student, I don't understand why I got a B. If you're an A student, just tell your professor why you're coming to class. I don't know. Just tell them you're an A student, they'll give you an A. I'm kidding, don't do that. Of course not, you got to do the work, right? So it was probably one of the worst emails I've ever seen. And I wrote back to the student, I said, don't contact me again. If you do, I may lower your grade to a C. I wasn't really going to do that, but man, what are some people thinking? I just don't know. How can you say in your email, I should have gotten an A, when your email is poorly edited, it's sloppy, spelling issues, typos, sentence issues, so forth and so on, I don't understand, So if the light bulb is not on, how are you going to do well, not only in, with one particular assignment or a class, but how does that translate to the workplace, A lot of employers, and for good reason, are not happy with what's coming out of our institutions of higher learning. So beware, take note, make a difference, right? Do something about it. That's why I'm doing all these videos and recordings and tips and things. Number one, everyone has problems, but don't go into details. It's not wise to go into details with your professor, for they are not counselors. If you need a counselor, there are many on campus and off who can assist you. Just tell the professor that you're experiencing issues that are being addressed. Again, no need to go into details. And that you'll need additional time to complete an assignment or some time off from class. If the time off needed turns into weeks, then you may consider taking the class at a later date, okay? There's only so much a professor can do. When I was in college, I think I may have, because of extenuating circumstances, I was not able to complete one assignment on time. But of course, I've been going to that college for many a semester and knew these professors, and they knew me. That's always a bonus when you know the teachers, right? And I asked for a little additional time on one particular paper, and the professor said, "I don't worry about it." So it's like I didn't have to say anything, right? So that's where you want to be. That's the kind of status you want to have, not only in your classes, but that translates into the workplace as well, right? So what to do about those assignments? The ones that you can't make up, that you can't do because you've got issues, something going on. Now comes the issue of asking for more time to complete an assignment or to take a test. Remember that a professor cannot bend over backwards, as I said, to help you, because the college has certain restrictions that need to be met in order for the student to finish the course. Look at the course catalog. I guess you could start there. Ask questions of the professor about those particular points. related to the course catalog requirements, attendance, times. You actually have to have your butt. You need butts in the seats, right? Students need to be in their chairs a certain amount of time in order to pass the class, all right? Just like there's a certain number of words or a certain number of pages, I guess you could say more accurately, because we translate the number of words that are required each semester in a particular course into pages for the student. There's a certain number of pages that have to be generated. And we're not even talking about a grade here, just generated, in order to be qualified to pass the class, just like you have to be in your seat long enough or enough days or enough time, I guess you could say, to qualify to pass the class. Delaying an assignment a week or so or putting off a test off, excuse me, let me try it again. Delaying an assignment a week or so or putting a test off for the same amount of time is usually the best most professors can do. But again, really comes down to you, your professor, and the requirements of the college, the situation, the particulars. Are you a first year freshman? Are you just starting out? Are you a hardened veteran? Do you have good standing with the college, good standing with a professor? Those things come into play. Number 3, maybe the professor doesn't use the campus email. Okay, professors probably do use the campus email, but they use other emails and other sources of communication. Keep in mind, half the professors work on multiple campuses, 2 or maybe 3 different campuses, so it's essential to find out how best to contact your professor. Some actually prefer the phone or a text message. Who knows? You got to find out. There are all different types of combinations of scenarios and situations for professors. Only about half maybe less, maybe 40%, 50%, not really sure. Depends on the stats of at that time, that year, those campuses. But I'd say, 40, 50% of your professors are full-time. 40, 50% are part-time. And if they're part-time, that means they're probably teaching at least, I would say 3 different college campuses. So they've got 3 emails and they've got less time and they've got travel time. They don't have as much, they're not just on campus floating from classroom to classroom to their office. They've got to, set up, and they also have to set up a schedule that works for them so that they can get to the campuses on time and the classes on time if they're working on 3 different campuses or more. I met one professor who at one time was teaching 10 classes, 10. No idea how he did it. I think the most I ever taught was 6 or 7. And that was crazy. But 10, boy. That's super professor territory right there. 4, let's talk email content and how to write an email. Since you're not the only student the professor has, nor are you the only student in his freshman comp class or classes, nor does he have students just from the college you attend. About a 50% chance of that, as I've said. So you've got to be specific. State the reason for your email in the RE line, as well as your name, the class, time, and even campus, just to be exact. It's complex out there, okay? I have often taught at various campuses 2 of the same classes, like freshman comp, English 101. And I've got 2 classes. And a student might email me and say, Professor Brown, I'm having problems with my paper. And I'm going, well, what paper, what campus? Well, you can kind of tell. If it's a student's email from that campus, and students don't always use emails from their campus, they might use, Gonzo Bonzo at Gmail or something, right? Always best to use your campus email when communicating with your professor. That kind of limits the hassle of the professor trying to figure out where you're coming from, who you are. But I've had semesters where I've taught many a semester where I've taught the exact same class on one campus, 2 or 3 classes. So if you say freshman comp, I go, well, which class? give me a class, give me a CRN number, a start time, give me your name, give me the assignment or whatever, be as specific as possible, right? Number 5, how do I address my professor? Not, hey, buddy, hey, you, hey, teach. I've been addressed that way. Probably mostly when I was working as a high school substitute while I was working on my master's. But prof, I think was one. I don't know where they got prof from, but anyway. Best to address your professor simply as that professor, dear Professor Johnson. This way you can avoid not here. I'm not talking about addressing them, in person to their face, but I'm talking about an email, right? This way you can avoid the awkward guessing as to whether a professor likes to be addressed as Miss, Mrs., Mr., whatever. Maybe you can find that out later in class when you are face to face. You can also avoid having to guess if the professor has a PhD or not. You know, so that's, simplify it, make it as general and as generic as possible. And then if you find out later some more details, they have a PhD, they like to be called, or, Miss instead of Mrs. or whatever. As you find out those details later on, you can use them. But up front, just, avoid that hassle and go with a generic general professor. Number 6, best to keep the email clear and concise. And I think I've probably going to cover this by the end of this video 3 times at least in some fashion. Excuse me. Professors get dozens of emails a day. If the professor is an adjunct as well as busy with other side projects like yours truly, they may have several college campus emails as well as personal and private emails. When I was busy, that would be me, your professor at hand, I had 6 separate emails that I dealt with on a daily basis. Oh, I remember that. I would get anywhere from 50 to 100 emails a day. The bottom line, keep the email clear, brief, and to the point. Also, don't assume the professor knows who you are or that you talked in recent days. Hey, professor, I'm still having a problem with that paper. Well, guess what? Most professors probably have 100 or more students, and they talk to a lot of students, and they have a lot of classes over a period of days. And you get an email on one particular day you don't know, is that referring to today, a couple days ago, 3 days ago, last week? Who is this? What did you say? What did I say? That's why I tell my students, when you email me, make sure that you repeat this conversation, remind me of this conversation, right? Because we have a lot, we not only have a lot of students, but we have a lot of things to do. We have a lot of papers to grade. We have a lot of administrative work. Some of us have other side gigs, such as I did for a good, probably half of my time teaching my coaching business, right? So there's always stuff going on. Not all professors are just full-time dedicated to just teaching, right? Keep that in mind. There's an array of scenarios for professors, their backgrounds, and how they go about teaching or what they teach. Also, don't assume the professor knows who you are. You talk to him in recent days. Help your busy professor put all the details in the email, right? Now, here's a few miscellaneous items that we can look at. Always acknowledge your professor's response or answer to your email, as well as any follow-up requested or info or attachments. That's always good. If the professor responds to your email, just a quick note back to the professor, even if he said, well, make sure that you submit to me via email in the next 3 days, paper X, whatever it is, right? So if you get that email, and you should be checking your email, professors sometimes might not get back to you within a day, probably, a couple days, 24 to 48 hours is usually the average time span. But some may take longer. I don't know. Again, professors are busy. A lot's going on. But for you, if you're looking to get something done, you want to make sure you're on that email you send it. You want to be checking periodically throughout the day that you sent it to make sure that, if the professor has responded, you respond right back. All right, professor, just got your email. I'll have that paper to you within 3 days. Yeah, whatever it is. And they'll quickly forget that you wrote that, but at least it's written down in the email, right? And they can reference it so that when you send the paper, they can look at it and go, oh yeah, so you did acknowledge 3 days ago and you're within that time period, fine, things are good. So it's always good to document. That's what I always tell my students, always document. Always write it down, put it in the email, whatever it is that we're discussing that you have to do or that I have to do, right? This is not social media, a text message, or an opportunity to get cute. Avoid abbreviations, IRL, IM, HO, IC, emojis, or other non-standard forms of written communication. And also nix the humor. Some students will I know professors sometimes will make jokes in class, but when you're writing a paper or when you're writing an email, it doesn't fly. Unless you're the latest, greatest comic to ever touch down on planet Earth, I wouldn't try it. It doesn't do anything. Most professors are probably not laughing at it. They're just annoyed. And they say, well, if I see another attempt at humor, I may cut this communication short. I may delete this communication. Believe me, some professors get pretty cranky. They really, they're about their time. They value their time, right? So avoid that stuff. Not a time to address your professor's teaching techniques or other criticisms. So you don't want to get cute. You don't want to try the humor. You don't want to do abbreviations, emojis. It's not a text message. It's also not a time to critique the professor. I've had students, I don't know if they've done it in emails. I actually had one student, there might have been a couple I taught. I'm only teaching a few classes now and then at this point. As a matter of fact, I haven't taught a class in about 6 months. I'll be teaching a few this summer. But I had one student criticize me in class. This student was one who used to, I've talked about him in other videos. I called him shirtless. He would come in and sit in the back of the room and with no shirt on and listen to, have his earphones in, listening to music and pretty much ignoring everything. And then he had the audacity a couple months in to pipe up and make some criticism about my teaching. I said, I don't want to hear it. You're not going to talk to me now. You're not going to criticize anything I'm doing whatsoever right now. That's private stuff. You want to talk to me about that later? Come up to me later, and if you want to keep talking, I'm going to ask you to leave the class. So there you have it. Edit. There's nothing worse than getting an email from a student that is difficult to read because of excessive spelling mistakes or typos. Also, get those sentences in shape. Remember subject, verb, object. Put those commas where they belong. If you've been in my English class all semester, and I think of that student that sent me that, I need a higher grade, not a B, but an A. And you send me garbage email, I'm seriously got my finger on the delete student button. Be careful. Not delete student, but delete the email. Let's ignore that, Why am I even bothering? They didn't bother. They didn't seem to put an extra ounce of energy or thought into this email. So why should I even entertain reading it? No time to butter up the professor. Most students don't do that. I have seen some get a little too much butter on the toast, I guess we could say. but most really don't make this mistake, but it's also always good to mention. It's fine to be kind and send a few positive words, but don't go overboard because it will not work in your favor. It will have the opposite effect. I've also had students write papers where they were trying to, they were pretending to or hoping to act like a PhD student and, use a lot of flowery words and phrases and language that was often very difficult, opaque, dense, and poorly written. So much so that I couldn't understand at times. I would kind of understand, but it was so flowery and flagrantly abusive of, uh, you know, abusive and avoiding the rules and standard methods of clarity and whatnot. I'm like, what? Um, Finally, no time to philosophize. The email is simple communication about something that needs to get done or be taken care of, not an opportunity to go off on your philosophy on education or life in general. All right. So that's it. Until next time, until the next list, have a good day.